All right, Southside FM, the big breakfast show, www.southsidefm.com. It is now 4 minutes after 8 o'clock, Friday, the 12th of August 2022. We have on the line with us former MEC for Economic Development, Tourism and Environmental Affairs in the KZN Legislature, Mr. Ravi Pillay. Very good morning to you, sir.
Good morning, Nishant, and good morning to your listeners. How are you?
All right, and you?
Good, thank you.
Are you really, after everything that's happened this week?
Well, if you've been around as long as I have, you learn to go through things, understand what's happening, and not be too stressed by it. But you're correct, it's still a bit of a topsy-turvy situation, a roller coaster ride sometimes.
Yeah.
But you've got to keep a cool head and feet on the ground.
All right, 100%. So, for the benefit of those who don't know Mr. Ravi Pillay, who is Ravi Pillay? How did it all start?
Well, okay. I'm a boy from the farm in Port Shepstone. My both maternal and paternal grandparents have their roots in two areas called Langobalela and Ban Farm, both rural areas of Port Shepstone. But I spent most of my life in a place called Albersville in Port Shepstone. What grew up my maternal grandparents, I suppose the grandparents are very strong figures in my life, very strong people. Loved football for many, many years. Until today, I tell my wife, football is my first love, and remains so. Grew up educated there, and then went to university. Now married to two boys, and taken a fairly keen interest in public life for a long time. What else do you want to know about me?
Just on that football note, who you support in the English Premier League?
English Premier League. You see, what happened was that in the early 90s, and I think the coverage of English football started strongly. Although my first team was Leeds United in the 1970s when I saw one of those pre-recorded, then I moved to Spurs. And then when my two boys were young and TV coverage was quite strong, the one fellow supported United and the other fellow supported Liverpool.
Okay, the other fellow is right with the Liverpool.
And then I didn't want to take sides, and at that time Chelsea was emerging.
Yeah.
And since then, I've for the last almost 30 years now I've been a Chelsea supporter.
Okay, not bad. We give you the benefit of the doubt there. Now, when did your interest in politics develop?
Well, look, in the mid-70s, once I was in high school and became conscious, you could see that something was wrong in society, and it troubled me. I had a teacher called Prithviraj Dule, who was very, very responsible for raising the levels of my consciousness. He actually subsequently went into exile in the late 70s under fear of arrest. And then my first year in university was 1976, which was a political baptism of fire. And you all know what 1976 was, and became thrown into that and participated in the activities and protests of the time, to the time when I think I arrived there, and my seniors were people like Yunus Karim, later Jay Naidu, and to a lesser extent Wali Musa and then UTW, and so I really threw myself into that activism from then.
All right. So, what are the various roles and positions did you have within the government?
Well, obviously, we didn't participate before 1994. In fact, we were involved in campaigns against the government structures then. Immediately after 1994, I think the first government kind of structures was what is called the Local Government Negotiating Forum, because you had all these separate structures and you had to start to think about how you're going to bring people together and structures together. And so I became a joint chairperson of the Local Government Negotiating Forum. That was in 1994, late 1994. Then 1996 was the first elections. You're too young to remember, I think, the transitional local council. I was elected there and became the chairperson of the executive council or committee of the Port Shepstone TLC at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Then in 2000, when you had your first fully-fledged local government elections, I became speaker of what was then the Hibiscus Coast municipality. And then in 2004, the speaker of the Ugu district municipality. And then in 2009, I was elected to the provincial legislature, and was first the deputy chief whip, then the chief whip. 2011 became MEC for Human Settlements and Public Works,
Mm-hmm.
and then thereafter, after the 2009, spent a long stint there, and then 2019 elections became MEC for Finance, and then thereafter, in November 2020, MEC for Economic Development, Tourism, and Environmental Affairs. So that's pretty.
So
Yeah,
you've won many caps in the local government sector. Now, your last cap was to do with tourism as well. Now, COVID-19 has impacted tourism wholesale. And what were some of the challenges you were faced with at the time regarding tourism in the KZN province? And what steps did you then take to mitigate that?
Well, my portfolio is actually much, much wider than tourism. Tourism was just one.
Yeah,
pillar.
one of the caps, yeah.
With economic development as a whole, tourism and environmental affairs. No, tourism was definitely the sector that was most decimated. You can imagine the lockdown initially, the inability to travel, and because necessity for people together in close proximity, it became a high risk with regard to COVID-19. And therefore, definitely, it was the most devastating. Working with national government, there was initially the 200 million relief package that was nationally. I think our share of that was about 650 odd beneficiaries from KZN benefited to that. We subsequently tried to supplement that with a further 20 million, although the take-up on that because of certain technical criteria wasn't too high. But most importantly, it was the work through an entity called Tourism KZN, which seeks to market the province, what you call destination branding and rebuild.
Mm-hmm.
So, but you know that and we were really doing well, and we thought we were just getting out of the woods on COVID-19 when the July unrest struck.
Yeah.
And that's a bit of time to recover from. Then we had a fairly decent December vacation, although not up to our normal historic pre-2019 period. Then we were building nicely January, February, March this year, and we were really looking forward to a bumper Easter. And then, of course, we had the floods in the week of the Easter vacation. Since then, we've been every time we get knocked down, we have to roll up our sleeves and rebuild. So it's been tough, very tough. I'm sure there are several businesses that closed, but we've got such beautiful natural attributes as KZN that it's easy to market. And so the July, what is now the Hollywood Best July race, was the first key indicator. We were very excited. I think we built up back to about 85% occupancy rates in our hotels in Durban. So what we must understand is that the KZN as a domestic tourism market remains the number one. We need to manage. We need to build on that. Our 600 kilometers of beaches, the Drakensberg Mountains, the Midlands Meander, the historical sites, the nature reserves we have in the north. We need to market it much more, make it a fairly full package. The most important thing, of course, is the 600 km from Johannesburg, the main market, and even the southern African countries. So, and then the weather, of course, is simply the best all year round. So those are strong competitive edges that we have to market. Of course, I think we little bit still have to deal with some reputational issues as far as KZN is concerned.
Yeah.
We're still recovering a bit from in the first day or two after the flood, 70% of our water, electricity, and sanitation infrastructure was knocked out. 70%.
No, 100.
And we have to rebuild that. It was quite an effort. And now we, of course, water is 95%, except for Tonga, which is we're busy with. Electricity, I think, is fine as far as infrastructure, except for normal faults or the load shedding. The one thing that still worries me, and I making a big effort as far as that, is sanitation infrastructure.
Yep.
We're trying to recover fully on that, and that has an impact on our beaches. But I think the work is happening. We hope sooner rather than later we'll be back to 100% as far as that is concerned. So, of course, tourism in KZN is probably a different balance. We probably, 10% international market and 90% domestic. So that's where our strategy is focused. Of course, the return of air flight, although not all of them, is happening steadily, and that's critical to the international market function.
All right. Now, in April 2022, we were hit with the floods. Now, would you say that poor maintenance on the stormwater sewage was a direct result? The floods were a direct result of this, because the amount of litter we see on the side of the roads and all these things, and all that there does go into somewhere, it's going into stormwater. So, what has been done now to rectify that issue?
Yeah. Look, my observation would be that it would have been a 10-15% factor. The truth is, it was more than a 1 in 100-year flood. I think the consensus is that climate change is a significant factor.
Yeah.
So, irrespective of how well your systems were, I think we would have had some serious difficulty. In fact, my observation is that the bigger damage, if you traveled around, and I did, was that it was debris, not necessarily litter. It was vegetation debris.
Yes.
And that talks to the river banks and to the extent of alien vegetation that come up, which has shallow roots. But the point I'm making is that you'll see, whenever you got to bridges, you'll see that this massive amount of vegetation came and blocked the normal flow of the water. Mm-hmm. And then the water had to find other routes, and then went around and then caused the kind of flooding. Of course, the sheer volume of water in a place like CBD, which has a canal system, the sheer volume of water, those canals were unable to cope. There's an issue around Shongweni Dam, which, when it broke its banks or the gates, which were supposed to have been designed in that way, caused a surge, which affected the Durban South Basin to a big extent. But the normal maintenance would be an issue. It wasn't a major issue in my view, but the climate change issues, I think, will become big. We'll have to do replanning as far as many areas of the Durban South in particular are concerned. And then we simply have to, and hopefully all people learn the lesson about the informal settlements along low-lying areas, which then has its own implications in terms of the maintenance of the low-lying areas and the kind of litter issues you are talking about. So those are things we need to have a collective response to.
Now, an area like Tongaat is still being affected by the damages of the flood. While you were there, what was the timeline to rectify this situation that Tongaat is currently experiencing? It's gone so many months now, so when can they expect completion?
Yeah, Tongaat was unique in the sense that there was a water treatment work, which was built by actually the Tongaat unit company in the early stages, where it was literally totally washed away. So your source of your water became a problem, and the rebuild of that plant is central to the recovery of that particular system. So then they had to redirect some water in some areas. It was possible, but then the major problem was the problem to at least an interim solution for significant areas was the relationship with Ilembe water and what's called Mgeni water, because the system is such that some part of the water could have been redirected, but there was Ilembe has contract with Mgeni, and Ilembe says, look, we have our own areas without water, and Mgeni says they had the contractual obligation. So that prevented a further possible, not solution, but at least for 3-4 hours a day. And that's why you had some areas with interim pipelines restored, but the bigger areas having to rely on the boreholes and the water tanking and the storage JoJo tank system that's been put in place. The latest report was that by October, the Tongat water works would have been re-established and we could get back to normality.
All right, 100%. Now, I'm sure the question everyone wants to know, or wants the answer to, is what prompted your resignation?
Well, it's a combination of factors, but I think the main factor was that we were coming out of a conference which had some significant changes. And normally when you have a political conference of that nature, then it has a ripple effect on representation in government, because the leadership that emerges needs to be represented in government. So we had a discussion with the new leadership and analyzed the political situation, and that there would and implied in that there would be these significant changes. And then there was the technical issue that there needed to be a vacancy to bring some of the new people in, and that to bring them in, there had to be a vacancy in the legislature. Of course, we had a discussion with all of the pathways at this point in time. I'd have had a reasonably long inning, as it were, and that if there were going to be changes, then I would be one of those that would become part of that change.
Yeah.
But it was also discussed as to what other contributions we could be making, having regard to the institutional memory and skills and so on. And it was agreed that space would be found for that. In that context, it was a very mature discussion, and it was agreed that I would then resign in order to deal with that particular situation.
Right.
So that's where it was, and that's where it is.
All right. So I see former Premier Sihle Zikalala has been brought in as an MEC now. What's next for Ravi Pillay following suit?
Now, look, I think it's a little bit open at the moment. I think it would be, I'm sure I'll make a contribution on the government side, but I think we'll also like to make a contribution outside government.
Yeah.
There's still very important tasks around social cohesion, recovering the economy. We did a lot of work as far as that is concerned. We're very lucky to have a diverse economy. I think we've disaggregated into 14 sectors. Rebuilding the confidence in KZN on the economic side is an important part of that task. And then, of course, on the ANC side is the renewal. I think we all accept that we have serious challenges which we need to deal with. Part of it is renewal on a whole range of fronts, as going back to the original values of the ANC. And including that is, reflecting and going back to its non-racial character of the ANC. So all of this, I think, will be spaces in which I'll find myself working. I think it will be a little less stressful having regard to the daily routine and schedule of an MEC, but I think the work will be no less important.
All right. So I'm getting some WhatsApps here, especially from the residents of Tonga. They want to know, I know it's not your function anymore, but they want to know why most of the JoJo tanks are not getting full in the Tonga area. So I don't know who you can check about that. But from Southside FM, we'd like to say thank you very much for affording us your time, Mr. Pillay, and we wish you all the best in your future endeavors.
Thank you so much, and best wishes to your listeners.